from Westminster Bridge. You can also cover it probably. Well, you might have, I don't know, but there are quite a number of operas which were written by Sibelius, for example, Tempest and Prokofiev, which are, of course, we already know, Rome and Zurich. And at the moment, at the British Library in London, there is a huge exhibition of the works and the history of the works, how they were created of Shakespeare. And what is really important, that's the posterity. For the posterity that get back all his works, wonderful plays and absolutely wonderful sonnets. And these are the sonnets which, of course, most of us love. I do hope those who know the English language and have learned it to the heart, most of them, because they really are worth it. And today, I have the pleasure of introducing to you Professor Philip Gill, who is going to speak about Shakespeare. Professor Philip Gill is a very experienced teacher trainer. He has knowledge in multifarious branches of science. And he has been teaching many teachers and students all over the world. And now we are very happy to have him here. Well, welcome, Professor.
Thank you very much, Natalia. So, shall we start? Can you all hear me? Right. Now, it's not an original title, I'm afraid, but the title of the most influential book about Shakespeare. In the 60s, or at the very end of the 50s, it was thought that Shakespeare was more of a museum piece in terms of performance than something living, something real. The jealousy of Othello, the ambition of Macbeth, the procrastination of Hamlet, and the imbecility of King Lear can't really be captured unless they're connected to the way we live now. And this Polish writer, Jan Kot, his ideas influenced the founding fathers of the Royal Shakespeare Company, Peter Hall and John Barton. These two people directed on the London stage for 40 or 50 years, and they set the tone for the kind of Shakespearean production that we have nowadays. And it's this I want to celebrate, rather than Jan Kot himself. I'll be focusing less on an academic approach to Shakespeare, despite finding myself in a prestigious university like this one, and more on the oral tradition that they have passed on. It seems fitting, if you believe as I do, that Shakespeare is best experienced in a theatre rather than read off the page. I will be making a few philological observations. Kot's ideas are best applied second-hand from those and others who were rather less tainted by political corruption. Apart from being a brilliant theoretician of the theatre, Jan Kot was a practical nightmare for Polish people living under a hated regime in the 1950s. Right. Next slide. So marrying two traditions. This is what John Barton talked about in a series of lectures or workshops available on YouTube. They're called Playing Shakespeare. The Elizabethan tradition, what is it? What is it? What is it? To be or not, it's not that. It's not that. It wasn't that. We might think, at one point, we might have thought it was that, but Barton and Hall have made it clear that it was not that. The modern tradition, what is it? Actors trying to be natural in a filmic sort of way, even in the theatre? It's not that either. Because if you kind of close in on yourself and it's like you're trying to show something just by the expression of your face, you can't do it unless you're in a film. Even in a small theatre, smaller than this auditorium, you still have to project. So it's not this kind of Marlon Brando style of acting, if you remember who he was. And it's not this declamation. It's a marrying of the two. It's a balance somewhere in the middle. So the line versus the word, the Shakespeare line. We're going to go into that in a bit more detail later, or very soon in fact. The verse line, Shakespeare. Short burst, short. So what is it? Let's do it in a kind of EFL kind of way. Is it 1A or 1B, do you think? Can you read that? The verse line, short bursts of utterance, sometimes no more than single words, which is natural and which is contrived, somehow made up or artificial. What do you think? Is it 1A or 1B? 1B. Well, I'm going to argue the other way around. Do you know the series Breaking Bad? It's brilliant, isn't it? Absolutely brilliant. Maybe the best thing that's ever been produced on TV. So, given that you know what I'm talking about, it's not so much those scenes between Walter White and Jesse Pinkman. One is speaking as an educated teacher, and the other one is speaking as a smart guy in short bursts of language, pointed words, and often there's very little communication. That is filmic. That is, but it's pointed and it's filmic. Yet it's not what we do in real life. We speak in senses, we speak in units of sense, and you can't do that. You can't do that just by adding little words here and there. It has to be a line, it has to be smooth. So the line verse, I would argue, is relatively more natural, certainly in the theatre, than short bursts of utterance. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so for some people, the line is more important than the word. Who are they? Who's this guy on the left? Sorry? Yeah, in the middle? Yeah, and on the right? What do they all have in common? Right. Do they have anything else in common? They're all black. The guy on the right might be white on the outside, but he's black on the inside. So rhythm is the lifeblood for rappers as it is for Shakespearean actors. The ear versus the eye. As I was preparing for this, I looked at a few clips and I looked at Puff Daddy doing Missing You. The original song by Sting is not a very good song, but he's taken it and done something interesting with it. He's given it a bit more life. He did it on a big stage, absolutely no decoration at all, no pyrotechnics, because Puff Daddy wanted his audience to listen. And if you've seen Hamlet on the stage and enjoyed the sword fight at the end most of all, then you kind of missed the point. You don't really, or if you come out thinking it was a wonderful set, I like the way that those French windows opened in that way, right in the middle. You've kind of missed the point. Nowadays, we take in so much information visually. We have smartphones, we have advertising hoarding. I think we're smarter than we were 400 years ago. But I don't think our ear is so sharp. Because all the info, very nearly all the information came through the word. Macbeth, is this a dagger I see? Is this a dagger which I see before me? He has to make you see it. He has to make you see it. There's no great symbolic show of a dagger in that particular scene in Macbeth. We'll look at that later. You have to see it. He has to make you believe it with the words, with the line of the words. Okay. Scansion. Di-dum, 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 di-dum. I talked about marrying two traditions. Now this line, I want to go and get a cup of tea, is like a marriage made in hell. Because it scans, it's got five stressed syllables and 5 unstressed syllables, but it's not a very pretty line, is it? I want to go and get a cup of tea. And yet it's regular. A line not too long, not too short, can, despite its ugliness in this case, carry a perfect unit of sense. We try to make sense when we communicate, not fire words at each other like bullets. It's the same when I teach phonology to people your age. It's not really taught, the skills, or rather the systems, grammar, vocabulary, discourse, phonology. It's not like French, Spanish, or Italian, where you got something to say, then you add on a bit more, and a bit more. It's stress-timed. It's stress-timed, so the stresses are very important. So I is unstressed, to is unstressed, and is unstressed, and of. So I'm going to make them as weak as possible. I want to go and get a cup of tea. This is the Shakespearean iambic line. It's pentametric. 10 syllables, 5 stressed, 5 unstressed. Each is a foot or an iamb. The second one is stressed regularly, although Shakespeare plays about with it. I want to go and get a cup of tea. Doesn't mean very much, does it? But I will always want 10 syllables. Let me play around with this. It's rather banal line. So I want to go and get a cup of tea. What about I want to go and get a cup of tea? Does the meaning change? So what's the difference between the meanings? Well, maybe it's difficult because the first line is rather bland. But I want to go and get a cup of tea. What does that mean? Yeah, not someone else. I'm talking about myself. I want to go and get a cup of tea. I want to go and get a cup of tea. Now, what about this? I want to go and get a cup of tea. Listen to what happens. I don't know if you can see it. Want to. Want to. What am I doing? To get the line the same length as the other examples. I want to go and get a cup of tea. What do I mean? I don't want to be here. And my excuse is I'm going to go and get a cup of tea. Okay, the line takes as much time to do it that way as it does in the other previous examples. I want to go and get a cup of tea. I've taken a pause. I've allowed myself a pause because of what I've done to want to. Wanna, gonna. You know this from Breaking Bad and countless other stuff. It's legitimate, by the way. It's legitimate as a facet of speech. So I'm not going to say it's impolite or obviously don't use it in writing, but it's okay. It's okay. So by contracting that, I've allowed myself a pause. Another example, I want to go and get a cup of tea. The meaning changes slightly. That's my reason for going. You might not like it, but sorry. I want to go and get a cup of tea. Same length. What about, I want to go and get a cup of tea. What does that mean? 2 actions, yep. So that's 5 examples. Each one had 3 of them had 10 syllables. 3 had 9 syllables and a pause, each of the same length. And when an actor, I'm not an actor by the way, when an actor gets a line like, I want to go and get a cup of tea, he has to decide, or she, how to say it. There's a whole variety. Some say, well, Shakespeare man, he's no good, he's not natural, let me just speak it from my heart. There's plenty of choice. If you respect the line will respect you. Okay, so that's the basic idea of the pendramatic line, used just before Shakespeare, used for, well, it's not used now. There are some plays actually. There's a play called King Charles III, very successful in London. That's written in this, it's called iambic pentameter. 10 syllable lines with 5 stressed syllables, 5 unstressed. This play was very successful last year. Okay, so I'm talking philology rather than biography. I'm looking at the rhetorical theatrical devices from 400 years ago in order to establish their importance now. Just as your professors apply the time-honored rules of grammar to the learning of English now. I'm not really interested in Shakespeare, the Shakespeare who still, I am interested in the Shakespeare who lives through his work, not a dead one who had a dark lady and left his second best bed to his wife in his last will and testament. I'm not interested in what he had for breakfast. Shakespeare lives. Shakespeare is our contemporary because we perform his plays. We don't read them. We don't just revere them and turn them into films or whatever. We play them. So I'm not an actor. An actor, and this is the bit I can't really do very well, an actor has to find the right emotion for every line of Shakespeare. The same is true, but in a completely different way from another great writer, Chekhov. And the other moderns, Henrik Ibsen of Norway and August Strindberg of Sweden. So we're going to be looking at some texts in a minute. But don't expect any great histrionic performance from me. If I come back again, I'll try and bring a few actors along. Okay, I'm more of an applied linguist. And something, does anyone recognize any of that rubbish on the screen? Yeah. Well, of course you do. It's important. And all these examples have been taken from a book by an EFL author, probably the best guy in terms of phonology and EFL, English as a first language, Adrian Underhill. Although in red, I've added one of my own. Okay, this intrusive R. We have, as teachers, we have to deal with it all the time. Law and order is much easier to say than law and order. I agree, it can be said, but it's much easier to say I agree. They are here. They are here. I want to eat. We can say I want to eat, but we can also say I want to eat. It's best done quickly. I want to eat. Please do it. They are here. I agree. Law and order. Elision is really big in Shakespeare because we need to get those 10 beats, those 5 beats on those 10 syllables. So we have to miss things out. Interest, we say. We don't say similar, we say similar. We say family, not family. We say gardener, not gardener. We say library, we say different. We say tonight. Well, that's slightly different because that's schwa, that's the weakest sound in the phonic system. And there's that one in red. Can someone just say that? Sorry? Okay, I'll give you a clue. The H is silent. Hour. 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 2 syllables. Hour. What's it in Russian? Hour. No, ha. I was thinking of Nash or Nasha. Hour. Hour. It can mean hour as well. Both. This is the spelling from an early folio, I think from Twelfth Night. It's also spelt in the edition that I've been using for this lecture, the first quoto. I'm losing my rhythm. Hang on, I'm just going to get some water. Just start there again. In the first quarto of Twelfth Night, the word hour, as in jas, is spelt that way, Howre. Hour, as in Nash or Nasha, is spelt the same way in other texts without the H. By the time we get to the first quarto, the first folio, which is the first collected edition of Shakespeare, published in 1623, it's available online from the Bodleian Library. It's free. You can download all the plays as PDF files as they were printed in collected form for the first time in 1623, where we get H-O-U-R-E. So, if I want one syllable, I'm going to say hour. If I want two syllables, depending on the line, I'm going to say hour. One last thing, assimilation features quite a bit as well. Shifting D and T. Must I. The T moves forward, and if you say it quickly, it's more like must I, where it's to slow it down, which is unnatural. Must tie. It only works when you say it quickly. Must I. End on. Okay, these feature in Shakespeare as well. They feature in the teaching of any half-decent English teacher anywhere in the world, including Russia. Okay, so part one, we're going to look at these rhetorical devices from a speech in Henry VI, part 3, Act 2. And we'll be looking at them, intrusion, elision, assimilation, to get the line right. Okay, and in part 2, briefly, we'll be looking at types of speech: monologue, chorus, soliloquy, exposition. It'll all be clear later. Doublethink. All are attended either by audience, dramatis personae, or decor and properties. That will become clearer in the second part. But we're concentrating on the first part. Here, on the left, you can't see it very well, is from the folio edition of the first folio, 1623, Shakespeare's collected works. And the stuff on the right is the same, but in modern spelling with my annotations. So, in this particular speech, we don't need so much elision, but we do need a lot of assimilation. It's difficult. Can anyone see that? No. Okay. What about that? Is that better? Right. Okay. Now this is early Shakespeare. This was written in about 1890, maybe 1891. No, 1691. I don't think it's too difficult. It's quite regular. Oh God, methinks it were a happy life to be no better than a homely swain. A swain is a young, unmarried man, to sit upon a hill as I do now. Now, an actor would need some kind of emotion, need some kind of motive. So let me try and represent it rather than actually do it as an actor. Just kind of gloss it over. At the end of January, I was coming back from a class in Universitet, a difficult class. I'd just done 10 years in Moscow and just celebrated my 60th birthday. I was tired. The weather had been awful all day, like today, but at least it's spring now. It was one of those days. The metro was delayed for some reason in Vorobyovi Gory. And I kind of felt these words. Tired. Okay, I do it kind of naturalistically, but still respect the line. Oh God, methinks it were a happy life to be no better than a homely swain. to sit upon a hill, as I do now, to carve out dials quaintly point by point, thereby to see the minutes how they run. That's the first three lines, really. Let me do them again. Oh, God, methinks it were a happy life to be no better than a homely swain, to sit upon a hill, as I do now. Okay, that's a bit too, as it were, common, if I can use that word. This is the king speaking. Let's try it in a more kingly, regal way. It won't work, I don't think. Oh God, methinks it were a happy life to be no better than a homely swain, to sit upon a hill, as I do now, to carve out dials quaintly, point by point, thereby to see the minutes how they run. How many make the hour fall complete? How many hours bring about the day? How many days will finish up the year? How many years a mortal man may live? That didn't work because I was not, with that word, I was saying hour rather than hour. So let's kind of go halfway between those two extremes. Oh God, methinks it were a happy life to be no better than a homely swain, to sit upon a hill as I do now, to carve out dials quaintly, point by point, thereby to see the minutes how they run. How many make the hour full complete? How many hours bring about the day? How many days will finish up the year? How many years a mortal man may live? I hope that sounded a bit more natural. Right, so a few things you've got to know here. Dials are like sundials, pieces of stone carved so that you can tell the time. Sundials, get them in the garden? No? Right. Look at that line, how many years will finish up the year? One syllable, year. But later on, we have to make it two to make the line scan. Let's go on. When this is known, then to divide the times. So many hours must I tend my flock, my sheep. So many hours must I take my rest. So many hours must I contemplate. So many hours must I sport myself. Okay. So if it's a regular line, where is the stress on the so many hours? So if it's regular, it will be so many hours must I tend my flock. But that's not natural, is it? So for many Shakespearean lines, the first syllable takes the stress. So many hours must I tend my flock. That's much more natural. So many hours must I sport myself. Okay? And I'm saying must I. I'm assimilating it because I want to stress must and I don't want to stress I or I. So many hours must I tend my flock, so many hours must I take my rest, so many hours must I contemplate. It's very regular now. So many hours must I sport myself. So many days my ewes, my female sheep, have been with young. So many weeks ere the poor fools will e'en. So many years ere I shall shear the fleece. Now look at the change. So minutes, hours, days, months and years. So I've changed it. Because so many weeks, but here I can't do it because I have to stress this. So minutes, can't do that. So from here, so many years ere I shall shear the fleece. So minutes, not stressed, hours, days, months and years passed over to the end they were created would bring white hairs upon a quiet grave. What a life were this. How sweet, how lovely. So the meaning depends on this. utterly, completely connected with meaning. So, in terms of that, let's just clear up a few things. You know, flock, ewes, female sheep, so many weeks, ere, ere is that the poor fools, I put in a W there, connected with intrusion, which we looked at a few slides ago. Well, they yin. The word yin means for sheep to give birth. It's actually yin, 2 syllables, but Shakespeare has already made a decision to not soften it. The y and the I, the yeah and the e in Russian, very important. It's sometimes important in English as well. So that's more difficult, that line. My sheep, my poor foolish sheep. Let's look at that. So we have 3 choices, or 3 options. No, hang on. Haha. Can you see that? Can you see this? So many weeks ere the poor fools will, and that's the Y that Shakespeare has taken out, yen. So how many syllables have we got there? 13, 14, but 13 if we respect Shakespeare's choice to remove the Y at the end of yen, at the beginning of yen. So, I've written this down, maybe better to read this. Now, this is pure speculation on my part. And for those of you who think this is just too tiny a point to dwell on, I ask for your patience just for a few minutes. Because it might be the case that the line has far too many syllables. It is the case. 13 and 14, okay, we go with Shakespeare. Syllables 1 to 4, I think they're okay. So many weeks. But weeks would have been pronounced weeks once. So there are 2 syllables there. But it seems logical to go with modern pronunciation. So many weeks ere the poor fools will yen. Now, we've got to do something. And I believe that we should be as natural as possible in terms of the modern tradition. The word fools, let's say fools. But poor, a bit more difficult. Poor, until very recently, rhymed with tour. Most people now say poor. And for many people my age, poor, we still say it. I don't know if I say it all the time, but I hear people my age say poor instead of tour. And given that we've been playing around with this sound in terms of hour, let's do that. But then we have 11 beats. So what I suggest is will get shortened. So many weeks ere the poor fools will yen, too long. So many weeks ere the poor fools will yen. That's 10 beats. These are the choices that actors make all the time. And if the Shakespeare tradition is to continue for another 400 years, I'm afraid they're going to have to look at the text technically in this respect before they even think about acting the part. Right. So, a bit more as to why it's important. Okay, now a bit of work. I think it's time for you to do a bit of work. Okay, now, if every line is the same length, and you all speak different lines, I have like 4 groups, a blue one, a red one, a green one, and a purple one, you should all finish at the same point. So let's try this. The people on my left, directly behind the camera in the middle of the room, can be the blue group, Group A. Okay. The people in the front of the camera on my left can be the red group, Group 2. The people directly in front of me as far as the camera, back towards the camera can be group 3, the green group, and the rest can be the purple group, group 4. So let me just say these lines. Okay, so many hours must I tend my flock. So many hours must I take my rest. So many hours must I contemplate. So many hours must I sport myself. Okay, so many hours must I tend my flock. Okay, so when I go up on the beat, okay, can you see your lines, each group? Okay, here we go. Okay, so I hope you were doing different things, different lines, but you were all stopping at the right time. Let's just do it one. Just say your line once. Okay? No, sorry, I'm confusing you. You say your line. Sorry, I'm not putting this very clearly. You just say your line according to your colour. Okay? And let's hope we all finish on the same nanosecond. Sorry, no, sorry. There you go, perfect, well done. Well done. Now, let's make it even more difficult. Because many of the words are the same. So many hours must I. And then, now, what about these other two lines? Now, here, you have to say years. So groups, what colours are blue and orange. You have to say years, one syllable, to make it scan. So many years ere I shall share the fleece. But you, the other two groups, will have to make 2 syllables of this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So your years has to be longer. You have to make it 2 syllables, whereas the other group, the other pair of groups, short. Years and years. Okay? So, blue and orange, okay, first line, green and purple, second line. Okay? Ready? Okay. So many, so where are the stresses? So many years ere I shall shear the fleece. Let's just look at my notes together. Absolutely. Okay. So many years ere I shall shear the fleece is yes, and this is this thing I pointed out earlier, where your one, so this group are going to stress this and not this, and then this, but and this, so this and this, this, and this. Okay, just say it to yourself. Okay, so which group? So okay, this group. You're doing so many years shall I shear the fleece. Okay, so many years shall. Just say it to yourself in your head. So many years. Feel the 5 beats. Okay. And these two groups. So minutes. Remember that group is. So minutes. First syllable is unstressed. So minutes, hours, days, months, and years. You say it to yourself in your head. Okay? Okay, so just think of that one line, block everything else out. Okay, go. I think that's not too bad. Right. So what use is it 400 years on? Which of these is not, well, you can see, these are eggs, yeah? And this is furniture. Which would you rather pack onto the van? Really? Why? Okay, there's that consideration. Let's say you're very, very good with eggs. Okay, excellent with eggs, and you're very confident about handling eggs. Do you really yourself want to lift this bed? Okay. Okay, what about one of the guys? You look like a big, strong guy. Which would you rather do? Yeah, why?
Because it's easier to put in the van.
Right now, look at the van. It's not a very good picture. Look at the van. Is it really easy to put in the van? If you've got things odd shapes. It's called a furniture van, but indeed, so the guys here, these guys are my great uncles, Bert and Harry. They were very good at moving furniture in the 1890s. Okay, but when we're putting things of a different shape into a space, it's not easy, is it? What do you get if you put the wrong things in first? I'm almost tempted to do it myself. What's the problem with doing this? What do we put in first, the chairs or the tables? Oh, see, there's a disagreement here. I think that when you start putting, there's an expertise to it, absolutely. There are people who do it very well. The space is irregular because the shapes are irregular. The eggs on their pallets can be put regularly so the space is uniform. The way that the Shakespeare verse is uniform. With all different kinds of eggs. One's with one yolk, one with two yolks, one from Rhode Island red chickens, one from another kind of chicken, maybe some duck's eggs, different eggs, but they can all fit uniformly, and it's easy. You only need to load it once. If you put the tables in first, you should have put the chairs in first, you've got to do it again. So the space between everything is uniform. Each of the eggs has a shape individually, but can be packed in regular lines, that word again, meaning that the space between them is uniform. With furniture, it's much more difficult to use the space in order to create fewer spaces between items, and thus get a decent amount of things onto the van. Right. Okay, another example of why it's still quite important now. So these are two lines, each has got a beat. What have you been up to all this summer? Okay, the wife and kids and me were in St. Pete's. The wife and kids and me were in St. Pete's. Perfectly regular line, that. What kind of, speaking in terms of language as a written form, or English as a written form, in terms of grammar, is there any problem with the second one?
He should be in the first place.
It should be, yes. Okay. Right. But it's okay. I mean, this is not writing. So, if I say to a colleague, what have you been up to all summer? And he says it in a perfect grammatical way. The wife, children and I have been to St. Petersburg. It's not in tune with the first line. It's not friendly because you've broken the rhythm. You've broken the rhythm. The wife and kids and me were in St. Pete's. St. Pete's is what English people call it. You call it something that's Peter, yeah. So I've done that. But if we don't like the person who says, "What have you been up to all summer?" and we don't match his rhythm, he's going to feel, maybe offended. So the second one is a perfectly natural spoken sentence, not written sentence, spoken sentence. It's fully iambic, it's friendly, it scans with the first one, it doesn't break the rhythm. The speakers are friends. This is natural speech now. If the second speaker doesn't like the question, he'll break the rhythm with something like a full grammatical sentence, better found in writing. He'll say St. Petersburg instead of St. Pete's. Right, now, I'm going to have to start taking off some clothes. Don't worry, I'll know when to stop. So part 2, the set speeches. Monologue. What's a monologue? One person talking. Is that all? Who's he talking to? To himself. Indeed. Oh, hang on. I think I've got it. Okay, right. Okay. That's an interesting point. Somebody said to himself, others said to the audience. If it's the chorus in classical theatre and in music is usually a group of people. In Shakespeare it can be one person talking to the audience. Obviously what's going to happen or has happened is important. And there's the word soliloquy. We can maybe find the word in there, solo. And the soliloquy can be of two types. Exposition, basically a character in the situation, in the scene, is not so much saying things psychologically, but saying things to a character so the audience understand. And there's the double think. To be or not to be. It's the double think. The character is there standing out of himself, trying to work things out for himself, herself, in two places at once. All are attended. Even if it's to be or not to be, there's the audience. Other speeches, the character might be talking to someone else within the action, another member of the dramatist personae, but it's for us to follow the plot and decor and properties. Is this a dagger I see before me? Right, so let's look at some of them. I've colour-coded them. So soliloquy, we're going to... chorus, we're going to start with Henry V, the opening lines. I don't know how well I'm going to do this, but I scored it in terms of stress, 5 beats, before I came today. So I'm going to explain a few things. Please stop me if I'm over-explaining. Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention. So I want a muse, I want inspiration. I want it to burn. A kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Then should the warlike Harry, King Henry V, like himself, assume the persona or the port of Mars. Mars is the god of, okay? And at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and fire crouch for employment. Okay, this is dramatic stuff. Okay, so there is the god Mars in the form of Henry V, and coming in to support him, famine. What's famine? Okay, right. I'm trying very hard not to insult your intelligence, but I have to be clear that there's certain things that you know. And then the tone changes. Crouch for employment, full stop. It's a half line. But pardon gentles all, the flat unraised spirits that have dared on this, I'm not insulting the hall, sorry, but on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so great an object. Can this cockpit hold the vasty fields of France? Or may we cram into this wooden O the very casques, helmets, that did affright the air at Agincourt? Oh, pardon, since a crooked figure may attest in little place 1,000,000, and let us ciphers to this great accomplishment on your imaginary forces work. You've got to work. I can't bring in all of Normandy and all of those places where the wars, 100 Years' Wars took place. You've got to. It's going to be in your imagination. So suppose within the girdle of these walls I now can find two mighty monarchies, whose high, upreared and abutting fronts the perilous narrow ocean parts asunder, English Channel, the Manche, depending on what side you're on. Piece out our imperfections with your thoughts. Into 1,000 parts divide, that should be one man, not on one man, and make imaginary puissance. What's puissance? It's a French word. Horses, yes? Cavalry. Think when we talk of horses that you see them printing their proud hooves in the receiving earth. For it is your thoughts that now must deck our kings. Carry them here, there, jumping our times, turning the accomplishment of many years into an hourglass. So the wars, okay, let's get it down into the length of a stage performance. For the which supply, admit me chorus to this history, who prologue like your humble patience pray, gently to hear, kindly to judge our play. Any questions about that text, about the words? Please ask. Okay, let me ask some concept checking questions. What's happening in the first part? What's being described? The war against the French, war. And when he says, but pardon gentles all, the flat unraised spirits that have dared on this unworthy scaffold, what's happening there? Sorry? Scaffold, stage. Okay, not clear. It's much more difficult than that other one, but it's still within your grasp, I promise you. Okay, so I'm here to tell you about what's going on in France. The English and the French are fighting. I, an old man, have seen war many times. I'm too old to fight, but I'm proudly patriotic. I'm telling you that our boys are doing well. Okay? But how can I do it here? How can I make you see those vasty fields of France? How can I make you see the English cavalry, the English archers, the foot? So how can I? It's a stage. I can't. You have to help me. You have to use your imagination. How can a crooked figure attest in a little place, tell you in a relatively small place like this, 1,000,000 places, 1,000,000 battlefields, and let us, like instruments or media, us players, explain this great accomplishment, but on your imaginary forces. You have to use your imagination. Suppose within the girdle, the ring of these walls, I now can find two mighty monarchies, whose high, upreared and abutting fronts, think of horses, upreared horses, ooh, yeah, the perilous narrow ocean. Okay, so they're each side of the English Channel. Piece out our imperfections with your thoughts. So let me just see if I can do this bit, and see if it's clearer, and then we'll discuss it. Maybe not the second bit. Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention. A kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and fire crouch for employment. But pardon, gentles all, the flat, unraised spirits that have dared on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so great an object. Can this cockpit hold the vasty fields of France? I've missed something. Okay. Oh, pardon, since a crooked figure may attest in little place a million, and let. Okay, I won't start again. The flat, unraised spirits that have dared on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so great an object. Can this cockpit hold the vasty fields of France? Or may we cram within this wooden O the very casques, the very helmets that did affright the air at Agincourt? Agincourt is where the battle was, or will be. Within the wooden O, the very cask that did affright the air at Agincourt, oh, pardon, such a crooked figure may attest in little place a million, and let us ciphers to this great accompt on your imaginary forces work. Okay. So, I hope that's a bit clearer. I hope it's about, you understand that it's about the line, the length of the line, carrying the meaning, so that you're not expecting battles, you're expecting more Shakespearean verse, more understanding through your imaginary forces. So that is the chorus. The chorus in Henry V appears at the beginning of every act and basically tells you he doesn't speak to anyone in the action. He doesn't speak to Henry. He's there as the chorus. Okay, we're bound to get round to this one sometime or another, won't we? How are we doing for time? Okay. So you know this speech quite well. You know of it, yes? To be or not to be, that is the question, whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing end them. A bit like the last one, this is a soliloquy, but it's not just, it's attended by you. It's not the actor speaking into a microphone, completely wrapped up in himself, like a rapper. To be or not to be, that is the question. Well, that is like method acting, that is all filmic stuff. It does not work. The actor's got to speak to the audience. So maybe those first three lines, yes, I can be kind of self-absorbed about it, self-regarding, but then I've got to ask you some questions. I need help. I'm a troubled young man. I need your help. Are you just going to sit there? To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep no more, and in that sleep of death to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. It is a consummation, an outcome, a result, devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep perchance to dream. Aye, there's the key, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil must give us pause. There's a full stop there, so Shakespeare wants the actor to pause. There's the respect. There's the dilemma that makes calamity of so long life. So the actor is inside and outside, and the clues are in the text. You attend to what goes on stage. It's not the actor just going completely in on himself. Okay, that is a speech. We're not going to do that. Henry VIII, Cardinal Wolsey. Hang on. Okay. Okay. Well, let's just quickly go through these. Okay, so I've done the chorus of Henry V. We've looked at this double thing where the actor's both in himself and outside discussing things with the audience. Exposition, where the idea of what's going to happen next comes through conversation with another character and interaction. All are attended. There's always something else there. It's never the actor on his own. It's either the audience, other actors, or the set. And the set is this a dagger I see before me? Let me clutch it to thee. You've got to see that dagger. So they're the different kinds of speeches, okay, supported by the iambic line. Okay, that's about all we've got time for today. Shall we finish? Yeah, please do. If there are any questions, please feel free to answer them. Do you want to use the microphone?
In the first place, probably we should really thank you very much for this absolutely wonderful. And probably there are some people in the audience who would like to ask a question. Anybody? Please.
Don't worry, I'm not offended. No one ever asks questions when I give lectures.
Well, I've got that question if you don't. Because you have given a session absolutely, well, first class, rhythmic, and semantic analysis of lines. My question is like that. Well, do you think that to understand Shakespeare, because, well, Shakespeare is hugely understandable, not only plays, but whatever. And do we have to analyze the learning every line the way you have done it here so beautifully, really to understand what he has got behind the lines? Well, do you think that, or should we just read them and understand as well as we can?
Okay, my answer to that is no, because the actor, if he uses the rhythm, if he respects the iambic pentameter, he's doing it for you. And all you have to do is use your imagination. So it's the actor's work to analyze every single word, every single meaning of every single. It happens if we were doing the cherry orchard. If you were doing the cherry orchard, the Russian actors would be analyzing every word, every rhythm, so that the communication is as open as possible to the audience, and the audience can just concentrate on what is actually happening rather than what the structure of the language is. The actor's got to get this right, so it seems easy. It doesn't seem anything. You don't notice it when it's right. When an actor gets it wrong, you soon notice. But when an actor's getting it right, it seems like he's not doing anything. So in answer to that, for people who go along to say Shakespeare, no, because all that preparation should have been done by the actors in the first place. Anything else? Don't be shy, let's have at least one. Do I see a hand? Of course.
Well, there is a lot of there's a lot of argument about the personality of Shakespeare, and do you believe that maybe he was not Shakespearean, that it was some other man, or maybe a woman? So have you thought of it?
Well, if he were a woman, it would completely rejuvenate feminism in academia. My take on this is that I tend not to stress the personality, because I even tend not to stress the unique genius of the man. I prefer to talk about the unique genius in terms of the play, because Shakespeare, whoever he was, and I generally think he was from Stratford-upon-Avon, and I generally believe he married a woman who was much older than him, and he had a rather unhappy time, and he made a lot of money. Shakespeare worked with actors. He was an actor himself. He was first among equals, and the plays are great because of the work of the actors he worked with. Richard Burbage was the person who played all the major roles, Hamlet, Othello, Macbeth. It was the collective responsibility that the King's players took at that original Globe Theatre that gives us the genius that we call Shakespeare. So Shakespeare, for me, represents that kind of movement in theatre, rather than a person. People don't like the fact that a poor boy with just a grammar school education was able to write about kings. But there would have been people in his company who would have been from noble backgrounds, maybe fallen on bad times, things like that. And he would have had he knew how to communicate with people. He was like a leech. A leech is the kind of thing that on your skin, it just sucks everything in, or like a mosquito. He was brilliant at that. He just took in everything. There's much we don't know about him, like the 8 years between leaving school and being found in London working as an actor, we don't know anything about. So there's lots of speculation. I prefer to focus on the works rather than the biography. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, sure.
Do you speak Russian? Have you ever learned it? Because you know the word nash.
Well, this is a bit embarrassing. I've been here 10 years. My wife is Russian. We met and we speak English together because that's how the relationship started. She's an English teacher. I can speak Russian a little, but I couldn't have done this in Russian, certainly not. I can get, over basic messages. Uvas jest piba, something like that.
Extremely important word.
A very important word, yeah. And I've been talking about Shakespeare, and it was important to mention Chekhov, who is a great writer. Completely different tradition, 350 years apart, or nearly 300 years apart from Shakespeare, but a great writer. I just want to mention that because I don't want you to think I'm being too chauvinistic about Shakespeare. Are there any more questions? Okay, well, thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure.
These are photographs of old Moscow. It is in English. And there is another book, which is in Russian. But, look here. It is about this building. Of course, you know, all those who are sitting here, that it was built at about,
this building.
This particular building, 1804. So it is over 200 years old. And it has, firstly, a very good economics, school of economics, and in that school, there were quite a number of people who went to this school, and they were really great names. Well, you can see that, those names on the board outside the wall of this particular institution. Well, thank you very much. That's it.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, everybody who came here, I think, it was a little difficult because
Yes.
to make a little things
Yes.
so that, not very easy to understand. But
Please
at the same
don't-
time, it was most enjoyable.
Please,
Thank you very
sorry.
much.